Welcome everybody to Dr. Mac's Regional Coordinating Council meeting, 1st of June 2021. And can you believe it's June already? If you're new to Dr. Mac, check out the website for information about the great work that's going on. It includes information about the metro area transportation options. Busy agenda today, as usual. We don't have time for individual introductions. So please be sure to type your name and organization in the chat box so we all know who is participating. Also, please use the chat box as needed for questions or comments. LaToya will be managing the chat for us today. You can also raise your hand in the hand function when we reach Q&A portion of the meeting. And off to you, Carol.
Good afternoon. I'm Carol Buchanan, and I'm the Director of Operations here at Dr. Mac. During the meeting today, we'll be using an interactive software called Menti. It's best to access Menti using your smartphone, but you can also access it by opening another window in your computer. So all you have to do is go to menti.com and type in the code, which I forgot to put here, but everybody listen up. The code is, and LaToya is going to put it in the chat. The code for today is 9371-2221. That's 9371-2221. We'll give everybody a chance to get there. And we want you to keep that site handy, and we will be using it later. Now, before we get started with the main event, we wanted to provide you with some Dr. Mac updates. So mark your calendars. Dr. Mac will be having their next training on July 6th on public transportation and disability etiquette from 1:30 to 3. So that's the Tuesday after the July 4th holidays. So take a look at your schedule and make sure to add that to it. If you are interested in participating, just reach out to me at the email shown on the slide. We'll be doing this in conjunction with the Rocky Mountain ADA Center. So again, reach out to me if you want to participate. There's my email, and I'll also take a few minutes to put my email in the chat for you. LaToya?
Thank you so much. My name is LaToya. I am the program manager for the Getting There Travel Training Program. Some awesome updates is that I will be slowly moving into in-person training to be doing the travel training. Currently, we are doing virtual. It is free, convenient at home. So if you guys do want to do it, jump on board now. My email's here. Send me your contact information and say, I would like to, do the virtual training sessions now. Again, it's convenient. You could do it at home. However, we're going to start moving into in-person. So I will be actually physically out there training them how to use RTD and Lyft public transportation. So any questions, you have my email. I'll also drop it in the chat.
Hi everyone, my name is Stephanie O'Neill. I'm a projects coordinator with Dr. Mac for our Getting There Paratransit smartphone app. Just an update, I'm doing some free virtual demos for our app. They don't take long, so it's a great addition to a larger meeting, and it'll give you some nice tools for finding some transportation resources. If you are interested in learning more, you can shoot me an email. I will also put that in the chat. Kate?
Thanks, Stephanie. Hi, I'm Kate Williams. I'm the Executive Director for Dr. Mac. It says there, Executive Director Updates. It's nice to see the Greater Denver region slowly returning to some modified form of normal. Research is showing that if you're vaccinated and you're not having any symptoms of COVID, you can socialize without a mask. Just be aware that not everyone has been vaccinated. Roughly 4 out of 10 people in the Denver area have not been vaccinated yet. You also will need to have a mask handy, as the federal regulations require a mask when riding any form of public transportation. That's for your benefit and for the benefit of those who are driving the rest of us around. Dr. Mac still has COVID updates on the front page of our website, just above the list of current transportation services. It's actually the first thing you see when you open up the website. What else is new? Our latest newsletter went out over the holiday weekend. If you are not receiving it and you're interested in receiving it, you can sign up at the bottom of the front page of our website. Just go to DRMAC-co.org. It's right there on the screen. Scroll all the way down as far as you can go, and there is a place where you can sign up for the newsletter. It's a quick, fun read. We try and put a bunch of items there that are relevant to transportation and accessibility and older adults and people with disabilities and more in our newsletter. The theme of today's meeting is inclusive transportation. Inclusivity has a variety of meanings related to economics, education, age, location, abilities, race, ethnicity, social status, legal status, and more. What rises to the top for us at Dr. Mac is inclusive access. Transportation is a basic need, which may not seem to be complex until you are the person that lacks transportation. Food, employment, shelter, medicine, these are seen as basic needs, but without a safe mode of transportation, which does include walking, biking, and public transportation, you won't have any access to the things that people need to live vital and healthy lives. So how do we all provide opportunities to be mobile for the members of our community? How do we help people move around safely to get where they need and want to go? Dr. Mac is actively working in this space. We want to connect people to transportation, and we advocate for it to be accessible for all. Providing information in a variety of ways and helping people to navigate what options are available are a big part of what we do. We also work to provide educational forums on relevant subjects such as disability etiquette, travel training, and to nurture relationships that promote access. Relationships like the one we have with the local coordinating councils, the Denver Streets Partnership, the Gathering Place, the Community Active Living Coalition, RTD's special advisory groups, and others. In that same vein, before coming today, we ask you to complete a quick one-question survey. The question was, in one word, what does inclusion in transportation mean to you? This is how you responded. It's a very interesting list. You'll notice that many of you chose similar answers. Some of the words that jump out to me are freedom, welcoming, happiness. How amazing that transportation is related to those feelings. Feelings of affordable, safe, secure, equity, everyone. Those are the themes that came up over and over again. Carol, did we have anything else that popped up that we want to? Oh, look, here's some people who gave more than a one-word response. Obviously, they were moved by the question. Some of the things that those people said are the ability to remain independent, getting where you want to be. Of course, we say mobility for all. That is one of the themes at Dr. Mac. Transportation for all. And somebody who said the ability to all who need or want to utilize public transportation, regardless of age, disability, or minority status. That's pretty cool. Thank you, ladies, who are running our Zoom meeting, for that graphic. Today, we've invited 3 different organizations to talk about how they are adapting and how they're being proactive to provide mobility options in a more inclusive way. If you have a question for one of the speakers, please hold on to it, or you could write it down, or you could put it in the chat. But we're going to let them all talk before we start into questions and answers. We will open it up once everybody's finished and give you a chance to continue the conversation. The first presenter we have today is Michael Davis from RTD. Michael, are you with us?
Yes, can you all hear me?
We can.
Wonderful. Great. Well, thank you for the introduction. My name is Michael Davies, Government Relations Officer for RTD. Thank you for all of you for having me today. And I've been asked to give a brief overview of RTD's partnership with the Mental Health Center of Denver and our program that pairs mental health professionals with our security team. So as a quick kind of background and overview of the program, this program within RTD started to take shape in mid-2018. And RTD's safety and security teams largely started this kind of first of its kind pilot by largely contacting the Mental Health Center of Denver and basically seeing, do we have a need here, and could you guys come onto our system and just see what kind of a partnership we could create. So clinicians, and they're called co-responders, and they get partnered with an RTD officer or with a Denver Police Department officer. And those co-responders did come out to our system, and in the initial months rode with us for a couple of months, agreed with our officers and said, yes, I think there's plenty of areas where a partnership between these organizations could make sense, and there's plenty of benefit to happen here. So that then kind of kicked off the formal beginning of this pilot program. And in the beginning here, we only had one mental health clinician or co-responder that would partner with our officers. So it has grown a little bit since then, and I'll get into that in a bit here. So the co-responder was then paired with our officers, and they worked for a 12-hour shift. That shift, originally when we had one clinician, we would put that person in the shift that made the most sense when our officers would have the most encounters with individuals that seemed like they might have mental health issues, or seemed like the mental health clinician could be best served. So since then, we've been able to increase the number of clinicians up to 4. And so now they still serve 12-hour shifts, but are spread throughout the week, essentially. And we don't have enough to have a mental health clinician or co-responder with us 24 hours a day, but generally have scheduled these 12-hour shifts to try to spread out that coverage as wide as possible and just be as effective as possible in trying to make sure that we at least have somebody there most of the time with these officers to help out. And so one of the things, the benefits that a mental health clinician can have when working with our officers is that they, when they have contact with an individual, they have the ability to, determine if there's immediate psychological attention is needed, if medical help is needed, if medications are needed, and then they have the ability to refer to a mental health organization. And those are all tasks that the officers just are not trained in or have the ability to assess on their own. So this just adds a really critical piece to our interaction with customers, at least when it comes down to if they're having to interact more with the law enforcement side of RTD. You know, for example, and this is an example that happened back in 2019 and was reported by one of our clinicians. It was one of the first clinicians that came on. And just for you all, this is just kind of a typical, I think, back and forth of how this process can happen, and the good outcome that has come about from this pilot program. And so this incident was here down at the at Union Station, and essentially an individual was very irate, very loud, and was trying to get onto a bus and what, you know, interacting with other customers that were also trying to board the bus. Eventually, customers kind of started to kind of withdraw, and the bus driver didn't know quite how to handle the scenario. The officers, before the mental health clinician got there, the officers were thinking, well, I think we need to kind of move this individual back away from the bus and see if we can kind of de-escalate the situation. The mental health clinician eventually got there and engaged with this individual and was able essentially to say, you know, you will still be able to get on the bus. Was able to calmly talk to the person. That person was able to kind of de-escalate and eventually got on the bus, and everybody on the bus felt comfortable with that person being there. And so it's just through the simple tactics that the clinicians have that maybe the officers don't have, that are able to kind of make that situation better than restricting the person from being able to use the service in the first place. So that's I think a common example that I've heard when I've learned about the program myself. So I want to also kind of give you a little overview about how the program was created and where we saw the need for this. And so our deputy chief of police, they're responsible, or he's responsible, our deputy chief of police is responsible for all follow-up for any customers that get suspended from our system. And so as he was doing his normal duties and going through and understanding, well, okay, why did this person get suspended? And many of these suspensions are for kind of repeat low-level offenses. And our deputy chief is, you know, goes through, understands each case and sees what they can do. Well, in doing his duties there, realized that a vast majority of the people that were getting suspended for the system on these repeat low-level offenses, they were also clients of the Mental Health Center of Denver. So that was what kind of initiated this outreach to the Mental Health Center. And so our deputy chief reached out to them. That led then to the individuals from the Mental Health Center coming on to our system and seeing how that partnership could work. But you know, so when our deputy chief kind of had that understanding of, okay, well, you know, there seems to be a big crossover here. Let's see if we can match these services up. Well, it turned out that there was a lot of crossover, and the Mental Health Center of Denver, you know, knew a lot of these individuals already on a very, very common interaction basis. So they were incredibly insightful and helpful, I think, to our officers, even before really working with us to just provide information. So that program has continued on and grown. You know, I think it was February of this year that we were really able to add on about 3 more mental health clinicians to our team. So that has expanded this program quite a bit. There's also some there's some other interesting data and interesting things that we're learning out of this program that I think are also helping to move in this direction of not trying to arrest out of a situation, or trying to ensure that we are providing as many services as possible to provide inclusivity on transit. So one of the things that came back, and this is out of the data, that when our police officers and mental health clinicians have an interaction with an individual, we're able to kind of collect data and over time be able to look at this data. One of the things that we realized is that 78% of the folks that were experiencing some mental health symptoms were also experiencing homelessness. And so through that program and that data, we have also realized that there is, of course, the need to, let's see what we can do around the homeless issue. And we did apply for a federal grant. This was the HOPE grant that was offered by the FTA. And that grant is leading toward the hiring of a full-time homeless services coordinator that can also be a part of this team and interaction with our customers. So that, I think, is a positive step forward, and that homeless health, or the homeless services coordinator, it really does have the ability to build a program where we are working with other formerly homeless individuals that can provide a good experience and provide good interaction with other homeless individuals to try to say, hey, take advantage of these programs. So that's been a great thing that's I think been born out of the data that we collected from the mental health partnership. One of the other things that we've also been able to do with the mental health and security partnership is really create some best practices around what our officers can learn from the interactions that we've had in the past and that data. And so things like best practices training videos that are being kind of developed and provided to our officers, and that, I think, really is going toward just making sure that we have officers that are as prepared as possible and understand as much as they can about the work that the mental health professionals are doing and how they can best assist when working alongside. So I think that is the general overview and some of the things that we've learned from this program. With that, I'll end my remarks, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. I think we're going to ask everybody to hang on to their questions for a moment until we hear the rest of the speakers, but we really appreciate that. And I think next we're going to have Myra Gonzalez. Myra, are you with us?
I am.
Okay, you have the floor.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So again, my name is Myra Gonzalez. I am a program manager with the Montbello Organizing Committee. We hyper focus on the Montbello neighborhood, but really we work in the entire far Northeast, which includes Green Valley Ranch, Parkfield Gateway, and the Montbello area. So next slide. Thank you. My specific project that I work on is called the Montbello Fresh Slow Walkable Loop, which is a series of streets in the community. It is an urban trail about 6.21 miles long, or in its circumference, and it connects different farm school partners, which are basically a lot of our Denver public schools who we have worked with for the past couple of years to establish community gardens. It also connects our Fresh Slow partners, so a lot of our community partners that include different nonprofit organizations, a lot of our different churches, and just other folks doing programming here in the community. Sometimes it's other foundations who are engaging with the community. And basically, we provide funding for them to activate different aspects and areas of the loop. And this looks very different sometimes, from events to public art installations to leadership development. We had a group who was focused on really lighting up the community. It's very dark out here. And so they were working on making sure that we had adequate lighting in the neighborhood. A lot of our walkable loop, it intersects with a lot of existing but also proposed bike lanes. And then overall, if I do my job right, hopefully it will improve the safety for pedestrians and cyclists in the community, folks like my mom, who leads a local bicycle club here in the community. Next slide. And so some really fun updates is that we received funding from the Trust for Public Lands. Recently, we received $40,000 and we have a commitment for more. But basically, this initial installment is to really do a lot of community engagement. The walkable loop was something that the community asked for a couple of years ago. And so what we're trying to identify now are what are the issue areas along the loop? How do we make this a safe trail for people to walk and bike on? Montbello in BC was born from this project. We have over 30 participants, half of them are children. And so we really want to make sure that for everybody who's riding on our trail, that when they are on the streets, when they approach intersections, that they feel safe riding around the community. And so this grant funding is really helping us and enabling us to start identifying issue areas and start identifying solutions. We hope that in future funding through the Trust for Public Lands and our relationship, that we'll be able to start to plan and be more active around wayfinding, making sure that the rest of the community knows that this amenity is here and that it's connecting them to other resources, especially because we're a food desert. We want to make sure that we are highlighting the access to free and healthy foods. We also started a partnership with Safe Routes to School and the Department of Transportation. We have a commitment from the city to really work on those issues that the community identifies, especially around the schools, which is a key, I think, a key benefit for the walkable loop, since the loop technically connects all of our schools and their community gardens. And so it's a win-win for everybody around the table. Next slide. We're really excited to kick off our bike programming. I was actually just meeting with our community leaders. We are hoping to plan different summer activation events. So get folks riding along segments of the loop, have the community identify issue areas, but then also bring additional resources and programming into the community. This image is of our last activation. It was a pilot just to see, because of COVID, folks' comfort level and what I guess our security measures could be, making sure folks, are socially distant, they're wearing their masks. But this is us dancing Zumba, and then the bubbles are coming from one of our partners, Energy Lab, who has stationary bicycles. You get on them and you start creating energy. And one of the things that you power is a bubble machine. And so our partner is able to set those up 6 feet apart from each other. And so if folks can't go on the bicycle ride with us, they can still get that experience of riding on a bike and activating the DJ booth or the bubble machine. And he has some really cool projects like a snow cone machine as well. And so we're really looking forward to activating the walkable loop, making sure that our community knows that it exists and that it's there, and that they can also identify any issue areas to start to make sure that the loop feels safe for them, walking or biking around it. Next slide. In Montbello, we are very fortunate that the Department of Transportation and infrastructure is very active. They were able to find funding to start a pilot micro transit project. And so these images are of the service area options. And so they're really looking into how can we best serve this community that feels very disconnected, and that back in 2016, we lost a lot of our bus service to the A line. So what happened there was we had a lot of just bus lines that were running through the community, east to west, which competes with the A line. And so RTD made the decision to cut that down and really improve the efficiency there and not duplicate its own service. But something that we have found over the years is that in reducing the distance between those lines and reducing that service, it's really left a lot of folks out, especially our community members who are transit dependent. And so what the micromobility will do in this area is really start to connect residents to areas of the community. The geographic space of the community is very expansive. These blocks are super long. It's not a very walkable community. It was definitely made when cars were at its, when we were designing everything around cars. And so we also know that in our demographics, we're a very young community, but then we also have a large population of older adults, which those two groups drive less and less. And so really making sure that they have access to the different amenities in the community. If walking and biking is not a feasible option to them, that they're able to connect to the different services in the community, that they're able to connect to our grocers in the community. And so right now, the Department of Transportation, along with the stakeholder group, is deciding and finalizing what the service model will look like, what the service area will look like. Some of these examples, only focus on the Montbello area, including the industrial park. Some of them expand over to the Parkfield area, which is really part of the neighborhood. And then it also connects them over on the Orange to the Green Valley Ranch, 40th and Airport Station, so that folks can make that connection to the A line. And so really beefing up that network and supporting our RTD service out here. They're working with RTD to make sure that we're not duplicating service and that we're creating and maximizing efficiency. And so our next slide is what I presented to some community members who weren't aware of this project or who don't know a lot about micromobility. The Chariot project that took place a couple of years ago, they used a shuttle similar to what we're probably thinking is going to happen in Montbello. And this, isn't going to be the exact same thing, but really wanting to start to get folks' imaginations going about what marketing can look like for us in Montbello, because we're heavily Latino population out here. What languages need to be a part of our marketing, what shuttle, what does the design of the shuttle need to look like so that you intuitively know that you can hail a ride. I know that the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure is also looking at what the service model will look like, if it's going to be a call and ride situation where you call the shuttle and you just know that in 15 minutes it's going to come pick you up where you're at and take you where you're going to go. If it'll be kind of a circulator or along a specific path, and then you can deviate, or it could deviate to pick you up. All of that will be finalized and announced by Dottie. And then we also found out, and they announced this, that they'll hopefully start this pilot probably at the end of the summer, early fall. And so we're also starting to look at how do we bring this up to the community? How do we introduce this concept? Some folks might not know about microtransit. They might not have experienced it. A lot of folks might have, depending on their past experiences, especially folks from other countries. This shuttle to me reminds me of the combis that you see in Mexico. And so really making sure that we're tying people back into it, and then also celebrating this accomplishment, I think, on the city's part, and then also for transportation, that it's something specific for the community, and that really strengthens our existing transportation system, and then also, pulls folks away from the instinct of just hopping in your car and instead using this shared resource and really starting to depend less and less on their vehicles and connecting to the overall network. And so those are our updates in Montbello, very heavily focused in the neighborhood, but hopefully, what we learn in our community is something that can be expanded to other communities around Denver.
Super. That's really interesting. I like the picture. Carol can tell us that we were very much involved, Myra, with the Chariot project, which was in Cherry Creek. So maybe we'll have some more conversation with you if we can help you with this one. That was really great. Okay, let's see who's next. We have Teague Kirkpatrick with Uber. Teague, are you here with us?
I am, yes. Good afternoon.
All right, you can talk. I'll be quiet.
All right, thanks, Kate, so much. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Great to see y'all. Thanks to Kate and the DRMAC team for allowing me this opportunity to speak to y'all. Specifically, what I'd like to touch on is kind of inclusivity from the perspective of technology. What can technology do? What can kind of communities and transportation providers, how can they use technology to increase mobility, to increase inclusivity? And so I just wanted to start by saying, I know many folks on here, but not everyone. Again, my name is Teague Kirkpatrick. I'm with Uber Transit, but a little background might be helpful. I've been with DRMAC, which is a technology provider for transportation providers, for about 10 years. And DRMAC currently works with I think 15 Colorado transportation providers all across the state. And DRMAC over our 20-year history has been focused on building transit technology tools specifically for ADA paratransit type of service. We've been doing that since day one and have always focused our technologies on specifically building solutions for the ADA community. We figure if we build it with this type of approach, the accessibility first approach, like that's our mindset as we build the technologies, it'll work for everyone else. Let's make it available and let's make it work and design specifically for the ADA community. Uber Transit, on the other hand, just got into transit about 5 years ago. Uber really reevaluated what their mission was as a company, and what their mission really, but they decided their mission really was to eliminate the need for individual car ownership. And so as they kind of reevaluated that vision and clarified that internally, they said, hey, we can really bring something to the table for public transit. Public transit has a very similar mission. It is reducing that need for individual car ownership. We have a network and we have a toolbox, a set of software and technology solutions that can assist transit. And as Uber kind of looked more into transit, they crossed paths with DRMAC. And as we looked at our kind of joint visions, DRMAC and Uber, it became very apparent that kind of a future seamless, cashless mobility option for riders, including specifically the ability for multimodal transportation, really fit both companies' visions. And so DRMAC was acquired by Uber Transit last year. And so now here we are. And what Uber Transit brings, again, DRMAC, I think many folks are familiar with. We've really, again, focused on kind of scheduling and dispatching tools for transit providers to provide better transportation services to the ADA community. Uber brings a couple other tools and options to provide transit providers other avenues to really kind of expand their reach and to provide more transportation options to more individuals, potentially reducing costs and increasing that rider experience. And again, really providing the tools to allow transit providers to potentially extend their reach. And I say all that because I think it's important that what Uber brings to transit, it's not simply an option to potentially outsource public transit to Uber. That's not it. Instead, what it really is to be able to provide tools and options to transit providers to provide, again, an extended reach. So that really is the purpose of Uber Transit and what we're bringing to transit. There's kind of two real main tools that Uber Transit has available. Number one is a voucher program. There's kind of many ways we could say that, but ultimately, what a voucher program allows a transit agency to do is to fully or partially subsidize trips that are pushed out to the existing Uber network. So Uber does have vehicles. Well, Uber doesn't own any vehicles, but there's an Uber network all around the city, in suburbs and small towns. They're out there driving around currently. Uber also offers Uber Pool, which allows riders to be able to get in a reduced fare if they're willing to car share with other or ride share with other individuals. Public transit obviously is very familiar with ride share. And so what that looks like is the transit provider can partner with Uber Transit and say, hey, we'd like to build out a program to extend our reach. And maybe that's offering late night service, or that's offering service on days we're not currently offering, or maybe that's simply providing a much more true on-demand environment for our riders. And transit agencies can really, just meet where they want to go with Uber Transit, meaning, hey, this program is we're gonna pay for. The rider pays the first $2. Us as a transit provider will pay the next $15. We'll do up to 4 trips per week or 4 trips per day. We will offer that to the community as part of our program. And what's cool about that voucher program is it's super flexible from a transit provider. That can be offered to the general public. So anyone that's within the zone or the time frame or the right area is capable of using that service and getting that subsidy through the subsidy funder, or that program can be limited down to a certain specific group of individuals, such as the certified eligible ADA community. And so transit providers can kind of pick that group on who's available to get those rides. They can run multiple programs, combine them, stack them up on top of each other. From a transit perspective, again, you're leaning on that Uber network. That Uber network is often able to provide these trips at a lower cost. So it can help reduce costs for a transit provider, which, as you all know, has a lot of fantastic benefits. If you can reduce costs, now you're able to accomplish more, you're using less dollars. And then again, leaning on that existing Uber network to be able to provide those trips. So that's one option that Uber Transit brings to the table. I think Uber Transit is currently working with about 60 providers across the US to be able to offer some type of shared ride program or subsidized shared ride program. What's interesting about them is, again, some are first mile, last mile, some are vaccine programs, some are ADA or above and beyond ADA type of programs. All of them are a little bit different though. They're all tailored to a specific agency, which is really tailoring that right to their community and really trying to fill in the gaps within the community, right? And that's a big piece that DRMAC has talked about forever, is saying, hey, where are those mobility gaps? And can transit providers or mobility experts identify those gaps and figure out innovative solutions to be able to fill that gap and provide mobility options? So again, I mentioned there's 2 solutions that Uber Transit brings to the table. One is that voucher program, again, to general public or specific entities or specific groups of riders. The second option is to allow transit providers to use Uber's technology stack to basically run their own Uber service. And so what that looks like, it's exciting. And so transit providers, especially any transit provider, can utilize the Uber network, Uber technology stack, meaning the Uber app, the Uber driver app. And so now when you go into Uber, you can see the normal Uber services that Uber offers, UberX, UberXL, but then can see a custom service that's being offered by the transit agency. So for instance, we rolled this out first ever was in Marin County in San Rafael, California. They called it Marin Connect. And so when you're in the Uber app, and if you're in San Rafael, when you look at the different transit option or different service options, one of those options says Marin Connect. And if you book through that, you can either book as general public, or you can enter your certification number if you're eligible for their ADA program. And now you get reduced fare. And when you book a trip through that, it goes directly to vehicles operated by Marin Connect. And a big reason so many agencies do this is kind of twofold. One is maybe you're in a rural area that doesn't have Uber and doesn't have TNCs and doesn't have many mobility options other than the local transit agency, who's only operating on selected hours. Now you can go ahead as a transit agency, provide a real-time on-demand Uber-esque service through the Uber app that's one reason. Another reason that a lot of agencies really like that option is because now agencies can not only offer that service, that on-demand service, and tailor that to their riders, tailor that program to the riders, but now they guarantee wheelchair accessible vehicles. And that's a real big piece. Obviously, we're talking about inclusivity on this. It's kind of our theme for today. So for agencies to be able to guarantee that wheelchair accessible supply, right? So if you're on that first example I gave with the voucher program, Uber does have a WAVE program, wheelchair accessible vehicle program, but we can't guarantee the supply of those vehicles. Transit agencies can, they can guarantee that supply. And so that allows transit agencies to really control that program and offer something that truly is accessible and inclusive for all. So those are the two main technology offerings. A couple of things just worth noting is Uber does have two other products. Excitingly enough, are both being piloted here in the Denver region. One is trip planning. So if you all open up Uber right now and go from point A to point B, you'll see the different services, UberX, UberXL, but then you'll see one that says transit. If you click there, it'll be a trip planner on how to get point A to point B within the Uber app, which is exciting. And then also Uber is partnering with Denver RTD to be able to provide mobile ticketing within the app. So not only can you plan your journey, but then you can actually buy a ticket and pay for that ticket. And then what's coming next, kind of generally, not just here in Denver, but when we kind of look at that vision of being able to say, hey, there's Uber Transit, there's potentially an agency operated on-demand service, there's trip planning, there's mobile ticketing. It's kind of the next phase when you look at the vision of Uber is to say, all right, let's do a multimodal trip right through that. And so, here I am up in Westminster, Colorado. There's a park and ride close to me, but there is no sidewalk to that park and ride. And for some reason, I live in a community that doesn't have any sidewalks. It blows my mind. But there's no sidewalk there. So if an individual in a wheelchair opens up their Uber app and wants to go point A to point B, they're going downtown, they can now book potentially an Uber trip to get over to the park and ride, and then a trip, pay for the trip downtown, and then get that last mile trip from, again, potentially Denver RTD or from an Uber driver, or using the Uber network. Lots of different options, but we'll be able to bundle all those options to have a much multimodal trip delivery, but only one trip request, one payment, and have that all seamless, which I think is really exciting vision. And again, that was RoundMatch's vision for a long time, and Uber Transit is helping us achieve that. A couple other things to point out, and kind of in addition to those tools, Uber is expanding our partnership with different entities to, again, assist in inclusivity. And so one example is a firm called GoGo Grandparent. So GoGo Grandparent's a very cool operation. They simply can partner with transit providers, or really partner with anyone that's trying to help subsidize transit through a TNC. And so basically they've got a virtual call center. And so now riders can call in and to GoGo Grandparent, and they will book the Uber. And so they can use the Uber tools we're using, such as that voucher program or that on-demand service platform that we're providing. But it now provides, again, I keep using the word transit provider, but really it's, transit enthusiasts. There's a lot of entities out in the community that say, hey, we would like to help provide more transportation, right? We would like to help do that, but we don't have any vehicles. And we also don't have a call center. We don't have any of that, but we can help in other ways. Maybe we can find the right partners and help extend mobility options. And again, a partnership like GoGo Grandparent with Uber, again, is kind of bringing different pieces in to be able to provide the ultimate outcome, which is more transportation options for the community. So I think I'm going too long. Sorry, Kate. The last thing I'll just, yeah, thanks. Just a couple, I think it's important just to kind of say some of the things Uber Transit is doing here in the Denver area. Again, Uber is a large company, but we really do try to bring it local and kind of highlight the outcomes. Uber has had a partnership with DRMAC. That program, or that pilot program, has since ended, but the two entities did work together to provide a lot of rides. And those rides, I was very open as far as who that was available to and what those trips were for. And it really was just, again, providing more transportation options for the community. Uber Transit currently has a partnership with Denver Regional Council of Governments with Dr. Cog. That's the goals and the outcomes of that program. That's that voucher program I mentioned. The outcomes are increasing mobility options for older adults, Uber Transit also has a partnership with Denver RTD. Denver RTD project is very exciting from our perspective to be able to work with an entity like Denver RTD. They actually use both of those options. It was kind of a two-phased approach. So the first pilot program that Denver RTD rolled out with Uber was being able to provide subsidized trips through that Uber network. It was offered to, it's basically an on-demand service for Assess a Ride customers in select zip codes. That was the first phase of it. And again, what we talked about earlier is, yeah, that does have a lot of advantages. It's very flexible, but how do you guarantee wheelchair accessible vehicles? Well, Denver RTD was ahead of that game and ready to answer that question. They have now done an extended part of that pilot, phase 2, which they're using wheelchair accessible vehicles through their partnership with MV Transportation. So now they can guarantee it. And again, you can, I guess I didn't mention this earlier, this is the case with RTD's partnership, but with all our other partnerships is not only can riders book that trip or request that trip through the Uber app, but they can still call into a call center. And obviously we're providing tools to all these entities to be able to book a trip. Not everyone's got a smartphone, we know that. We also have ways that we can manage the unbanked riders. Again, we talk about inclusivity. We have a partnership with Walgreens and CVS that allows riders to go in and pay cash that gets applied to their Uber account. So you can actually pay cash and then get that applied to your account. Now you're up and running. And so you don't need a smartphone, you don't need a credit card, and you're still able to be able to access those mobility options. The last one I mentioned is you may have heard Uber Transit. It's done a lot with the vaccine programs and the vaccination initiative. Last December, Uber committed to 10 million free or discounted vaccination trips. And then most recently, just late last month, is that Uber's partnered with the White House to provide additional rides to and from vaccination sites. So Uber really is committed to transit. We're specifically committed to mobility for all and enhancing mobility for all and accessibility first. And through that, I'm committed to public transit. So thanks so much for the time. I really appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.
Wow, Teague, that was a lot of great information. If you have 1 second, you used a word that we have not defined. I wonder if you could talk for just a minute more about unbanked and riders who are unbanked.
Yeah, absolutely. So unbanked is riders that don't have a bank account or therefore don't have a credit card or a debit card. And so, you know, they pay for cash. Now, that can be for a variety of reasons. That's why someone might be unbanked. But to be able to provide transportation options, you know, we see it now. A lot of transit agencies are like, hey, how do we go cashless? You know, we want to go contactless payments. We really want to get away from the need for cash and to be able to exchange stuff. And that makes sense in a pandemic. But again, there's a lot of individuals out there that use cash only. And if you deny them the trip, it's tough to say you're interested in mobility for all if you're not providing that option.
Super. Thank you very much for that. It's just, there are some new terminology that we all need to keep up with. Unhoused is another term these days for people who we used to call homeless. And it's part of inclusivity that we learn to use those terms. So I want to thank Teague and Myra and Michael. They have all given us a whole lot of information to consider. So before we go to questions and answers, and I hope that you all have some questions for this group, we're going to meet Stephanie over at menti.com. And the code again, which I was a good person and wrote down, you go to menti, MENTI.com, and the code is 93712221. Stephanie, you're up.
Yes, so I think Latoya also just pasted that code again in the chat, but it's 93712221. And the question we would like you to answer, to respond to, is what do you think the region should prioritize to make transportation more inclusive? I'll read that again. It's what do you think the region should prioritize to make transportation more inclusive? The answers, if you're not following along on Menti, we have lowering RTD fares, improving sidewalks and intersections, more protected bike lanes and spaces to ride, training on how to use a variety of options like RTD, bikes, scooters, and transit apps. And then we have making more private options physically accessible, like ride shares, cabs, bikes, scooters, and shuttles. So right off the bat, it's looking like we have a lot of answers for lowering RTD fares, improving sidewalks and intersections just took the lead. We have some responses for making more private options physically accessible. None for protected bike lanes or training on how to use options. We'll give it 10, 15 more seconds. If any more answers want to trickle in, just make sure you hit the submit button on your phone or the website after you click your answer.
It's interesting, isn't it, to see what the predominance is in the first two categories?
Yeah, it's very interesting. Oh, we got one for training. All right.
I bet I know who did that.
We'll go ahead and wrap that up. So it looks like most folks responded with saying that they'd like to see improving sidewalks and intersections and lowering RTD fares. So thank you for the feedback. That is all very helpful to us. And I'm gonna hand it over to Carol.
Carol, are you with us? Carol, we don't hear you.
Sorry, I was muted. All right, thank you, Stephanie. And that's information we might want to share with like folks over at DRCOG or other partners. So now we've given our presenters a chance to catch their breath. And so we're going to take a few minutes for Q&A. So please use the raise your hand function and I'll call on you. We will get to as many questions as we can. Let us know who your question is for, or if you would like all the presenters to respond. I'm gonna stop sharing so I can see you guys better. Okay, Kate, looks like you have your hand raised.
I do have my hand raised. I've learned how to do that. I have a question for Michael. I'm wondering if you know, Michael, where most of the issues happen that require the aid of the mental health professionals. You're muted, so you're safe.
Perfect, thank you. From my understanding, it's mostly been around the Denver Union Station area, but that is not the most firm answer. That based on, I haven't seen the data at every single station. That was just anecdotally expressed to me when I was kind of gathering information.
Super, thank you.
We have a question in the chat box. It says, when will RTD route schedules be restored, i.e. add routes back into their or where they're canceled during the pandemic?
Yeah, certainly. So with regards to route changes, June 13th, I believe, is the date that our next service change goes into effect. That service change does come with routes being increased and routes being brought back. It does not bring back all of the routes that were reduced or eliminated at the beginning of the pandemic. So that, but the plan is to restore routes within those service changes. Next one would be then September after this June service change.
And I think Jamie Lewis has a question for us.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the Montbello project. I think that's fantastic. And it kind of just proves that you don't need to widen streets or, get crazy with spending to do some great things. So hats off to the Montbello group. Really good work.
Anyone else have a question? I've got a question for Michael. Do you have any sense or do you have any data that suggests that there's more, or is there any way to even gather this data, like that more trips are actually being completed than previously with the use of the co-responders? Like before, would more people not be able to complete a trip? Are there more people completing trips? Am I making sense?
I don't think we have the data that it quite explains that. Again, I think in theory that is, you could say yes, that is the direction, but I couldn't answer that definitively based on the data that I have seen. But it kind of goes into that the unhoused aspects as well, and how that program kind of ties in. And ultimately, I think in providing services to the unhoused, it is potentially creating an opportunity where you then do have another transit customer that is able to ride. But no, from the data that we have so far, or at least the data that's been given to me on this program, I can't definitively say it's adding this many trips to what wasn't there before.
It does seem like anecdotally that you're having some good success.
It does seem like it's a successful program and going in a direction that certainly we want to keep adding more mental health professionals to partner with our security folks.
Thanks.
Okay, it's me again. I have my hand up.
Okay, you go ahead.
I have questions for everybody. Let me put my hand back down, lower hand. Okay. If you haven't used the raised hand function before, if you look on the bar where you mute and unmute yourself and where the chat is, there's a little face there that says reactions. And if you click on that, it will allow you to raise your hand. And if you're not going to use that, you can type your questions in the chat. And if that doesn't work, when I shut up, you can just ask your question. So I have a question for Myra, and then I have a question for Teague, but I'll do Myra first. Myra, what's been your experience so far with older adults using the Freshlow Trail?
So we know that a lot of folks in the community, through other partners like Montbello Walks, they work specifically with older adults. And so if they get together and form a group or a cohort, they're able to go and walk around the community. For us, our group, especially for the biking group, the age ranges from 3 years old all the way up to 54 years old. We don't have older adults who are members of that group just yet. But there are a lot of folks in the community that ride or bike, or especially in the summer. And normally they're not riding in the streets. They like to go to the parks. And so we have a really great system of parks. Well, we have a really great park around the high school with really great wider trails. And then we also have the Montbello Rec Center around Parkfield Lake, which also has really great trails. And so we see folks mostly on those. And then when we ask our participants, regardless of the age, they like going on natural trails because they feel safer. When it comes to riding in the streets, they don't necessarily feel safe, especially because of the heavy car traffic or the speeds. But now that we have the Montbello bike course over at the Montbello Rec Center, after our participants, both the children and their parents, once they went through the training on how to ride safely on the streets, they did mention that they felt a lot more confident taking to the streets. And so something that we're doing this year is not just riding on these nature trails, but also starting to ride and take the program participants along the loop more mindfully, and then to start practicing all of the skills that we learned at the bike trail.
Super, thank you. Can I just go ask my question of Teague now, or should I let somebody else talk?
Go ahead, and I'm going to double check.
Okay. So Teague, it's very interesting to me to hear all of what you're doing. And I know that you and Michael are already tied, and you're already tied here with Dr. Mack. And I'm just wondering if you see an opportunity to work with groups like Myra's to expand the kind of work that they are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Kate. And that's absolutely right. And so I think specifically when I mentioned the voucher program, allowing people to lean on the existing Uber network. And then when you combine that again with what I mentioned about our partnership with GoGo Grandparent that provides a call center, that allows us to work with all kinds of entities that are enhancing mobility. So, you know, departments of health and human service, they say, hey, we want to try to provide some enhanced mobility, but we don't have any vehicles. We don't have anyone that could answer the phone. Like, how do we go about doing that? So yes, absolutely. You know, DRMAC Uber Transit is kind of working with 6 different providers. I think probably 20 of those partnerships are with individuals that don't have any existing network of vehicles. And so another good example would be the Dr. Cog partnership, right? They don't have any real vehicles. So Myra, yeah, absolutely. It was just sent her a private message. So she mentioned the microtransit initiative that they're looking at. So absolutely, whether they don't have any vehicles, that would be a perfect kind of opportunity to look at partners like Uber Transit and GoGo Grandparent. Yeah, you know, and I think it's important. I think everyone understands, but Lyft is out there too. So there's another network, and we do see a lot of entities that are partnering with both. They're saying, well, hey, let's, why not? Let's get as many mobility options out there. And even though Lyft is essentially a competitor to Uber, I still see it the same way. I'm like, hey, why not? Let's just provide as much mobility options as we can.
That's what Dr. Cog is all about. It's mobility for all. So we have a lot of people on this call today who are involved in providing human services transportation. And so I want to recommend that any of them feel free to talk to us. We do want to note that we have a member of Lyft on our board of directors. We have to give fair play to everybody. And Teague, if you want to put your contact information in the chat again now, that would be great. Okay, anybody that wants to ask a question, just can we unmute?
I think Jamie, do you have another question?
Yeah, I do. I wanted to ask Michael, considering the RTD properties are so well defined, have you guys have shared with the municipalities, the police departments of what you're doing? So if that incident or problem person goes over into city property, that there's some kind of understanding that you guys are working with mental health?
From my understanding, we do have good communication with the other police departments in the various municipalities that our system interacts with. So from that perspective, I think we certainly do educate them on this program and what we're doing. I know, Denver Police Department has created a similar program to this separate from us, but where they are also now, essentially mirroring this same program within the Denver Police Department. I don't know about other police departments though, if they've done that as well.
Thank you, Michael.
Anybody else?
This is Bob Brucker. I have a question for Teague related to Uber. So Uber is, as you said earlier, a very large company with operations all over the world. So what has Uber learned in those operations internationally that would help us in this country to provide more of those mobility solutions? Obviously, some of what you talked about earlier, the specifics of that, but are there any other points that you've heard in your Uber meetings that might be helpful to us?
Yeah, that's a good question. And keep in mind, I'm relatively new to Uber, so I don't have all the ins and outs. But that said, I mean, keep in mind the Uber app itself, just the Uber app is a business to consumer product that is relatively the same in every country, right? Throughout operations. And so a big piece, what does come through with kind of working across the world is insight on how to make a very usable and customer friendly experience. And I think that's a big piece that Uber does bring to public transit. I think public transit is, even Route Match is guilty of it. We built technologies that were really focused on the agency, right? And so, allow the agency to track their vehicles, allow them to better schedule their trips, to group rides, to be able to report, really, kind of provider-centric technologies. And even Route Match, it wasn't until 5 years ago or something, we really switched our development process to look at a rider-centric development process. Like, let's stop looking at this from the agency's point of view. Let's look at it from the rider's point of view. So just the usability and the ability to provide a solution to the rider and see it from the rider's perspective, I think that's a big one. In regards to transit and really what transit is doing and how that works. Again, Uber's experience is limited, and it's changing. And like I mentioned, the tough thing that we run into, Bob, is I mentioned with all those 60 partnerships, every one of them is a little bit different. And that's probably something that I think it's important to point that out to communities and stakeholders, to say, hey, there is no template these days. Everything looks different. The ability to innovate, the ability to think outside of the box, the ability to really listen to your riders and tailor programs to your specific community. That's really when we say mobility on demand, that's really what it is building programs and skills, spin those programs up as your ridership needs them, as opposed to saying, here's a service, I hope that works for y'all. Right. And that's what we do. And I hope that works. Instead, it's going out to your community and say, well, what do you want that service to look like? And what's the point of these services? And let's look at some of the outcomes that we're doing. So, I think that's probably most importantly when we talk about kind of lessons learned is it's really, coming to transit agencies and educating them that really what you need to do. And again, we've learned this through the pandemic is you need to be flexible. You need to be nimble. You need to be innovative. And it's a kind of a funny thing, through Route Match's experience working with 500 providers across the US, the rural providers are often some of the most innovative ones because they are so nimble. They can do things quickly and fast. And they're like, well, let's give it a shot. And if everyone says, enough people say, what's stopping us? Well, nothing. All right, let's do it. So we have seen a lot of the more rural agencies kind of blaze the way of pilot programs for providing on-demand transportation, which is exciting.
Well, and they have to be more flexible because of their situation. So the larger agencies like RTD and others in other cities, even larger cities, are kind of stuck in their ways and probably much harder to work with and to change and to find that flexibility. Have you found any of the large transit agencies, including RTD, that have that kind of innovative flexibility?
Yeah, we are. I mean, specifically RTD. So I mentioned that we're partnering with RTD on a pilot project for on-demand services, both with a voucher approach and with a dedicated fleet, partnering with MV. And they're exploring kind of other stuff within the Uber app to be able to provide other options. So Denver RTD is one. Across transit, which is crazy to me, I thought it was a joke at first, is, we're even seeing positions being filled titled Chief Innovative Officer. And so there's whole departments now that are absolutely going after looking at innovation, looking at how they can do things different. One example is we're actually partnering with in Boston. We work with a transit provider out there, and they're exploring these same type of solutions for their ADA community to be able to provide same day on-demand transportation that's intertwined with traditional scheduling. That's at MBTA. A similar kind of innovation, but it's different in nature, is with our partnership with DART, which is in Dallas area rapid transit, and they're looking at removing underperforming fixed routes and providing lots more on-demand transportation options in those communities. And they're partnering with taxi providers that have an integration between the core backend scheduling system and different taxi providers that are using different technologies. So now you're looking at multiple providers, private and profit, ingrained through APIs on numerous different technology platforms. So that, that innovation of being able to provide multimodal transportation, integration between technologies, and then integrating between those services using those different technologies. Yeah, we're absolutely seeing movement on that innovative front.
Well, that's encouraging. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not seeing any other hands. Latoya, do you have any other questions in the chat, or?
There is not.
Kate, you see anybody else?
No, we could do another Menti exercise if you want.
All right. Well, yeah, so over to Menti. If you guys want to head back over to Menti.
Andrea did put in the comments earlier that some people may not know how to. So what I'm going to do is actually put a link in there in the chat box. So just give me a second. If you guys don't know how to use it, I'll just put a link in there.
And we'll be sure and read it all out loud. So if you want to put your answer in the chat box, at least we'll hear from you.
Yes, please. So yeah, let's head back over to Menti, and we just want to hear from you what you think some of the challenges or barriers to inclusive transportation are, and just type that in there. And if, and just so you know, if anybody has any feedback about today's meeting that they want to share, you can always email me and we'll connect around it, or I'll put you in touch with the right person. All right, so we have money, so affordability and costs are definitely, seem financial over there, first and last mile. So people who require supervision due to behaviors in the community. Let's see.
Ooh, it says knowing what's available. Just call Dr. Mac. We'll tell you what's available.
Yeah,
That's
lack
what
of technology. I think some of our speakers have addressed that, like not everybody has a smartphone, or that person. Availability. People don't know where to report barriers. So again, that's one thing maybe if you contact us, we can help you with. Let's see, understanding the systems. So that's a big one. I think that was one of the multiple choice answers in our last question, was like, yeah, how do you use the system, or how do you use the app, or whatever? And I think that is a gap. I think Latoya and her getting their travel training addresses some of those things where she's trying to help people learn how to use apps and how to use fixed route and commuter rail and light rail. So does anybody else have ideas about addressing any of these challenges?
No, but you're right, Carol. I do cover quite a bit of what we're talking about in my trainings. So again, if you guys want to know more, come along and it'll be nice and easy for you to understand.
Yeah, even things like the income-based program that's available through RTD that provides a discount based on income. Yep. All right. Well, again, all great information that we will pass on to those who might benefit from hearing some of these ideas. And
Carol, can I butt in a minute?
Yeah, butt in, Kate.
Okay, I just want everybody to know that if you want to share this information with somebody who couldn't be here today, that we do post our meetings on our website, and you can go there and you'll be able to hear and see this whole presentation. We've done it with the last couple, and so they kind of tend to roll off, but if you have somebody that wants to see this that couldn't be here today, it'll be up on our website in the next couple of days.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I was just going to say, presenters, if you haven't already done so, please put your name and contact information in the chat box in case you have a new partner that would like to reach you. And so I'm going to turn it over to Hank to wrap us up. We're going to give you just a few minutes back today and send you on your way. But Hank?
Thank you, Carol. And big thanks to the three presenters. A lot of good information covering different aspects of transportation. Really appreciate that. Big thanks to the 40+ participants that were on this Zoomland visit. And don't forget about our transportation workshop coming up for disability adequate, and that's July 6th, 1:30 to 3. With that, I bid you all adieu.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Hank.